Okay, so that said, you're in the Senate. They want to legislate. Labor wants to legislate a 43% reduction in emissions by 2030. They took it to the election. They have a mandate. Will you allow them to enact that mandate?
Well, that depends what the full nature of the legislation says, Laura, and that goes very much to the conversation we were just having. Simply legislating a target is meaningless and without looking at the framework within which that target will be achieved. And so that's the real question. What is the nature of the legislation that will be brought forward?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure whether there's
that target and what are the implications of that?
I don't think all the steps are going to be in the legislation. Isn't that, part of, Parliament passes the target, government of the day decides the steps. Isn't that how it works?
Well, that's certainly not how I would expect it to work. The Parliament should clearly have a say in relation to the type of steps, and there should be some clarity around how it is that such a target would be met, and what is the premise behind the legislation. Is it a target with consequences, or is it simply a symbol? So if it's a target with consequences, then rightly we need to scrutinise the consequences and how that is laid out. If it is purely a symbol and is of absolutely no consequence aside from the Parliament making a statement in favour of a 43% emissions reduction target, well then what's kind of the point of it aside from making a statement rather than actually having the clarity about how it is achieved? They're for the government to answer those questions. For us, we need to see the legislation to be able to make an informed decision about whether there are any consequences to that legislation and if there are, what they are and whether the government's got that right.
Okay, your inclination, if you will, Senator, if it comes down to it and all that detail that you're there and it's symbolic and it's just that 43% target by 2030, will you block it or will you pass it?
Well, Laura, I want to see Australia achieve as great an ambition in emissions reduction as is possible, and I want to give as strong a support as is possible to achieving those emissions reductions. But I'm not going to give blank cheques to the government personally, and nor should the opposition give blank cheques to the government without actually seeing the nature of legislation and their proposals.
Okay.
So there's a concept that the government has put out there about legislating the target. Let's see the meat on the bones of what that concept actually is, and then we can make a decision about it. The emissions reduction target itself, if it can be achieved without causing loss of Australian jobs, if it can be achieved without driving power prices higher for Australians, then of course I want to see us achieve that maximum ambition. I want to work with Australian business, industry and others to protect those jobs, to protect Australian households as much as possible and to achieve that maximum ambition to contribute towards climate action.
Okay, before I let you go, these sanctions from Russia, 121 Australians on that list, including some of our very own Sky News journalists. As the Shadow Foreign Minister, what is the actual effect of being on this blacklist?
Laura, some of us have been on those lists for a few months, and so those added, like those of us who are already there, will find that of course we're no longer able to travel to Russia. Not that I expect too many people had much intent of travelling to Russia. I understand there may be other implications around financial or other engagements with Russia, but really this is Russia playing petty games. The serious issue that is at stake here is the respect for the sovereignty of Ukraine, the horrific human toll that continues to occur. I am very pleased to see that many parts of the international community are rallying once more in support of Ukraine, that the United States has committed further support to Ukraine, and I hope and urge the new Australian government to continue as we did with providing maximum assistance of a military nature as well as of civilian support to Ukraine and the people of Ukraine to help them continue their heroic fight against Russia as we've seen and for which they should be very proud of the way in which they have defended themselves to date.
You don't want to go to sunny Russia, Senator? Not on your list?
LJ, it's not quite on the holiday plans, that's for sure.
No, I'm a bit disappointed I'm not on the blacklist actually, but we'll see. Give it time, I guess.
Keep asking me questions and I'm sure you will be.
Okay. Senator Simon Birmingham, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, my pleasure.